Good afternoon. My name is Barbiturates, and as chairman of the Associated Student Speakers Program, I'd like to welcome you to our 8th program of the quarter. Today, we are honored to have with us the Commissioner of Baseball, Mr. Bowie Kuhn. Mr. Kuhn was born in Maryland, grew up in Washington, and completed his education at Princeton University after serving in the Navy Officer Training Program during World War II. Mr. Kuhn joined the Wilkie, Farr & Gallagher law firm, and he became active in baseball legal matters from the very beginning. As Commissioner of Baseball, Mr. Kuhn has succeeded in revitalizing our national pastime and making baseball as prominent as it had been in the past years. His topic today will be baseball and college. It's my great pleasure to introduce Mr. Bowie Kuhn.
Bob mentioned that I had graduated from Princeton University. That is quite true, and it reminds me of one of my more embarrassing moments that I've had in this past year. You all have no doubt heard of the Curt Flood litigation. I was testifying, I'm one of the defendants in that litigation. I was testifying in federal court in New York, where that was tried last May, I guess it was. And my lawyer is a lawyer from Washington named Victor Kramer. And I was being cross-examined in the second day of my stand on the stand. And it came to be part of the case of the plaintiff to try to make me out to be some sort of an economics genius, which is rather difficult to do with me, I can assure you. And he was asking me questions designed to get me to admit that I was some sort of an economic expert, and I denied it, because I'm not. And finally he said, "Do you mean to tell me that you, with a degree in economics from Princeton University, are not an expert in economics?" And I said to Jay Topkis, who was questioning me, and he was a Yale man, incidentally, I said, "I have to tell you, Mr. Topkis, with all respect to Princeton University, that an undergraduate degree in economics does not make you an expert in economics." Whereupon my lawyer rose to all the majesty of his 5'8" and said, "Your Honor, as a Harvard man, I would like to subscribe to the last statement made by my client." But the college world is a very important one to baseball and to me. I'm out here in California at this time, thanks to the kind invitation of Bob Elias and the Speakers Bureau. But I'm out here on a series of very important business conferences I'm having with the clubs, the 5 clubs in California, and also in connection with a very pleasant event for me tomorrow night in San Francisco to attend a special dinner being given for an eminent baseball player named Willie Mays on the occasion of his 40th birthday. It's hard to believe that Willie, the eternal wonder child, can be 40 years old, but he is, just about. But when Bob gave me this open invitation, I was determined that I would come because the colleges have meant so much to me, and I think mean so much to the future of baseball. There are a number of obvious reasons why this is true. Let me start off with sort of why it might not seem to be true. Baseball, of all the great major team sports, is the one that derives the least of its professional talent from college players, as I think you know. Professional basketball, professional football get almost all of their talent from the colleges, whereas we, over the years in baseball, have by and large developed our own players through our minor league systems. This has proved to be, I think, very beneficial to the country at large because it has meant that Major League Baseball has subsidized a vast system of professional baseball throughout the United States and Mexico and Canada, where we operate clubs in 150 cities and provide some of the finest, most wholesome entertainment that's available, if not the most, in all those cities. But at the same time, it's been an extraordinarily expensive thing for baseball. Whereas other major professional sports are able to bring their talent straight off the campus at relatively little cost to them, baseball, on the other hand, has enormous player development costs, and one of baseball's problems today is I'd like to see more of our clubs in the black than I see. We have some clubs that are in the red, and it's difficult for them to compete and give the fans what the fans ought to get in the way of a good team and a well-presented team and all of that when a guy's got red ink on his balance sheet. So we are delighted to see, and selfishly in some ways, but also as good citizens, we're delighted to see that more and more of our young players are coming from the rapidly growing baseball programs of America's colleges. Today, there are about 1,500 colleges and junior colleges in the United States with baseball programs, and some 37,000 young athletes are involved in those programs. Mr. Tremendous number of athletes, tremendous number of programs, and incidentally, a very rapidly growing one. Just 6 years ago, there were 1,100 as against 1,500 today. So the growth of college baseball is very dramatic. And more we find that the quality of coaching in the colleges has risen. Southern California is a graphic example. UCLA with its excellent baseball coaching under Coach Reichley, and Rod Detto over at USC, and Bobby Winkles down at Arizona State. These guys are wonderfully proficient trainers of professional guys who have prospects for a professional career, one from trainers of amateur athletes, and fine guys in the bargain who see to it that collegiate athletics are put in their, I think, in their proper perspective. I think it's a mistake for collegiate athletics. Myself, this is a point of view that many would disagree with, to put too much emphasis on things that are closely related to the professional aspects. I think baseball has made a great contribution to collegiate athletics, and I think it's made it in the right way. And increasingly, I think this is true. Actually, the first intercollegiate play in the sports field was in baseball a long time ago. In 1859, if you care to go back that far, during the administration of President Buchanan, Amherst played Williams in an intercollegiate baseball game, and that was the beginning of intercollegiate athletics. And I think it has been a wholesome sport for colleges. I think it has permitted the youngsters involved to get the benefits, the healthy benefits of college athletics and intercollegiate competition without some of the overemphasis that comes near professionalism that we sometimes see in college sports, which I think is bad. And I think that this record is one which we can expect to continue. But in any event, a byproduct for professional baseball, and one we're very happy about, is that more and more really good young players are coming out of the colleges, well-trained, and able to move with relatively little minor league experience, occasionally with no minor league experience, into major league ranks. A graphic example this year is a young man named Steve Dunning. Came out of the college ranks last year, is with the Cleveland Indians. He was their #1 draft choice. And He was with them half the season last year. So far this year, he's already pitched a one-hitter in a game in which he struck out 16 men. So this gives you some idea of the ability of college baseball to produce great ball players and ball players who can move rapidly into the professional ranks. Tommy Seaver would be an outstanding example from this part of the country. Jack Robinson would be an outstanding example from this part of the country. He played baseball here at UCLA along with a few other sports, I think. But this has been most beneficial to us, and there's no question that we are fascinated with the development and are very happy to see it. There is another aspect of it which we find quite nice too. That is, somehow or other, when you get a Tommy Seaver out of college, he comes out with more glamour. There's more glamour somehow attached, by and large, to the young man today who comes out of college, I think, than the fellow who may come through another system of training or no system of training. And this is a very distinct plus for us as professionals, and we're delighted to see that too. You'd be surprised, perhaps. I really am myself. I stopped this morning and I said, how much time do I, as commissioner of baseball, find I devote to colleges or universities or junior colleges or what have you in one way or the other? And as I sat down and thought about it, I was really rather surprised at how much time I do devote. And again, this manifests our great interest in college athletics. It involves our very considerable investment in college. I would guess that Major League Professional Baseball invests more money per capita, per dollar earned, I should say, of its gross revenues in college scholarship programs than any other industry in the United States, and in any event invests far more than any but a fraction. Baseball, a relatively small overall business when you stop to look at the total number of dollars involved, invests $1 million annually just in college scholarships to put young men through colleges. We do this under a program which we call the College Scholarship Program. And under this program, we may sign a young man to a professional contract out of high school, and as part of his deal, he may opt to include the College Scholarship Program. And under this program, he gets 4 years of college paid for by Major League Baseball, by his particular team. And up to now, I think baseball, since this program was instituted, has put 1,300 young men through college. And they can do this with the increasing number of four-semester colleges. They can do this and still play minor league baseball at the same time. So we are currently investing $1 million a year in our belief in the importance of college education for young men who are coming into baseball. And this has increasingly manifested itself in the number of young men in our game who have attended colleges. At the present time, I think a lot of people would be surprised to know that over 60% of the men in Major League Baseball have attended or graduated from college. But as I look at my schedule, I was out here last year to attend the Riverside Baseball Tournament, which involved USC and Arizona State, several other colleges. I stayed there for that tournament. That was the day they asked me to throw out the first ball. I had Stan Musial, the fearsome left-handed batter of great note and Hall of Fame standing, whom you all know, with me. And I had Monty Urban with me, who works in my office, former great Giant outfielder. They asked me if I'd throw out the first ball and if I'd just let Musial stand up at the plate and hold a bat and sort of look like he was going to swing at it, and Monty would catch. So I got out there on the mound, and I looked down at home plate, and there stood Stan Musial, all crouched up like a coiled, powerful spring with that bat. And I thought to myself, good grief, do I really dare put it anywhere near him, even though I know he's not going to swing? So I fired in my pitch, and I kept it well outside. I don't know if I really tried to, but there was no question that's where I put it, and I think my better judgment was controlling all that. And I strode down off the mound, having done my job, and Musial is still there all coiled up, saying, "Come on, Commish, throw one over. I'm going to hit it this time." I said, "Oh, my." So I went back up on the mound, and I made 3 genuine efforts to put a pitch over to the plate to Musial. And I'm really not half bad. I play baseball with my kids all the time, and I'm reputed to have a reasonably good throwing arm. The first pitch I threw behind him. The second pitch I bounced twice before it got to home plate. And the third pitch nobody could touch. It was so far outside, a wild pitch outside. I finally said, "Stan, I just can't do it." And now I sympathize with all those National League pitchers that had to face you all those years, and gave that up as something I really couldn't do. I was at the NCAA World Series last year in Omaha, which is really a glamorous event of growing importance, won by a California team. I am going in the next month to the NAIA tournament, which is a sister organization to the NCAA involving the smaller colleges down in Phoenix. I will be next Tuesday on a television show with Jack Kaiser, who's the head baseball coach at St. John's University in New York and one of our finest college coaches. 2 days later, I will speak to the College Coaches Luncheon in New York, which features the coaches from most of the Ivy League schools and the big city universities in New York City. Emmett Ashford, who's over here with me today, a great and thank you for Emmett and thank you for me. And so while I'm at it, I'm going to finish that. That's Joe Reichler sitting next to him, who's the head of public relations for baseball. The most distinguished Bob Reynolds, the president of the California Angels and a regent. And Red Patterson, the head of public relations for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Anyhow, Emmett will be out at Boulder, Colorado in the next month attending the National Junior College Amateur Athletic Tournament, baseball tournament, representing me because that's one I can't get to. I'll be going around to the 5 college summer leagues that we subsidize in baseball. This is another one of our programs to promote and supplement college athletics. And under this program, we have 5 reasonably expensive leagues to operate, made up of cities, various parts of the country. And these cities have teams representing them, which are made up all completely of college, undergraduate college baseball players. And these programs have been most successful and very popular. And I don't see any end to where I'm going to be going in college baseball, because this is just some indication of how important I think it is. The fact that I'm standing here is a very clear indication of that. I think also that before I turn this meeting over to questions, I would like to talk to you a little bit about where the game of baseball is today, particularly professional baseball. I may say that professional and amateur is obviously closely interrelated. The growth of any sport is bottomed on amateur support to the kid on the sandlot, the kid in the Little League organization, the colleges, the junior colleges, all of the great amateur programs, just mom and dad going out with the kids to throw a softball around. All of this is part of the bottom of any professional sport, and it most assuredly is for us, where we have tens of millions of people in this country who are out doing that sort of thing and participating in those programs. But professional baseball has a long history. Sometimes people feel that baseball has been too mindful of its history and been too tradition-bound. And I am not one to say that this has not been so. I feel it has been so. I feel that baseball, however, has turned a corner and has moved and will move very effectively into programs, approaches, and whatever it takes to do what is necessary for the contemporary sports fan. And there's no question that the contemporary sports fan is not exactly like the one of 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years ago. We are changing. We are a changing society. In my judgment, we are a changing society in a very healthful way, in a way that is good for our country, in a way which I think denotes the ability of this country to develop, to go to new approaches, to try new approaches, to have the courage to experiment. And I think baseball, if it's going to prosper and present to the fans what it ought to present to the fans, is going to have to be a part of that. So any notion of baseball being tradition-bound, I think, can be forgotten. Baseball is going to be a contemporary sport. Baseball is going to open its face wide to the possibility of change. One of the reasons I am here, apart from just wanting to give you some thoughts, is I want to hear the questions that come off the campus of UCLA. I want to know what you're thinking about. Wherever I go, when I speak, I say, okay, now I'm through. I'm more interested in what you have to say than in what I had to say. You may not believe that at the length I've been talking so far, but it's true, and I am going to stop in a moment. But we must know what it is our fans are thinking. We're going to experiment with the game in ways which we think are constructive. We have been doing that. We have made dramatic changes in the game in recent years. We have gone to divisional play. We have lowered the pitching mound, redefined the strike zone in the interest of producing more hitting, because we are convinced that that's what the modern American fan wants to see. As much as I may like a 1-0 baseball game pitched by two great pitchers, I think most fans, actually including me, would sooner see a baseball game that's 10-9. So we're very mindful of the needs of our fans, the desires of our fans, and we're going to respond to them. And I think you will see in the next 5 years, in the next year, in the next 5 years, and ad infinitum, that this game is going to be modern and responsive as it must be, and that's its obligation. So there is my word on baseball as I see it today and why I'm here talking to you. And now I am, as I said, much more interested in hearing what you have to say to me.
We'll take questions. If you raise your hand, we can begin. Let's start in the front. Could you stand up and speak up?
In reference to Curt Flood, there's been a lot of talk recently comparing baseball to basketball, in the sense that if a player is not happy with the basketball team he's on, he can play out his option and go to another team for players of equal ability. Could a system similar to that be worked out in baseball, something along the lines of a player having played, say, 5 years in the majors, then being eligible to do that?
The playing out of the option is actually a football system. In basketball's reserve system is exactly like baseball's, modeled after it. The thing that basketball has, which is different, is 2 unorganized leagues, which means that a guy may jump from one league to the other, which produces some flexibility, and which has obviously happened. Football has the option system. Not too many players move under it, you may note. Otherwise, it is essentially like baseball. I feel this way about such suggestions, and goodness knows we have heard a lot of them in baseball. We just went through a long case in New York, the Curt Flood case, trying this very issue, whether or not the baseball reserve system was a reasonable restraint in light of all the conditions. It was there, indeed, that my inexpertise in economics became so transparent. We started the case before a judge named Cooper, Irving Ben Cooper, who started out in the first hearing, and traditional in litigation, you go through a lot of hearings before you get down to the guts and the final decision. In the early going, Judge Cooper raised very grave questions as to whether the baseball system was not too restrictive. He said he rather was inclined to think it was, beyond the immediate needs of the sport. After a prolonged and thorough trial, in which I testified, in which Bob Reynolds testified, and in which people testified on both sides of that aisle and on both sides of that question, Irving Ben Cooper dismissed the case, said that he had learned things that had never occurred to me, that he had learned about the evolution of the system in baseball, how the protection of the players' rights had been thoroughly respected by, in his opinion, the clubs, and left the matter, if he were wrong, for higher authorities to review. It has just been, he has just been upheld by the very distinguished Court of Appeals in New York with an opinion in which it has said that the baseball world has treated its players very well. There's more here than I could possibly go into in trying to answer a question. I wish I could take it down and try to explain to you what really the two sides are to that. I think, by and large, there's been a tendency in the media to feel that the system is too restrictive, perhaps without examining some of the necessities for the system. And part of it, I will say just this, is because baseball does have to support a minor league system. It can't rely on the colleges for its talent. It costs baseball about $350,000 today to bring one young man to Major League Ball. It costs football and basketball zero. Therefore, baseball needs more control. It doesn't actually have much more control than either. We're that important.
Do you have anything you can tell us about the possibility that the Padres are leaving San Diego?
Do I have anything I can tell you about the possibility that the Padres are leaving San Diego? I can only say this about the Padres. They've been there 3 years. This is their third year. I think there has been some disappointment that they have not been better supported in San Diego, but their team has not been a particularly good team. So it's no great surprise that they don't get overwhelming support. They are very well operated by Buzzy Bavasi, who is as knowledgeable a baseball man as there is. They operate under a long-term contract with San Diego. And I would have to say that I think it's premature to make any judgments about the situation, because I think you've got to give it some more time to develop. But do keep in mind there's a long-term contract down there.
Yes, sir, you said that baseball is based on amateurism more than perhaps the other major team sports. And also I would say that baseball has greater ability to draw the average everyday person to the stadium as opposed to expensive tickets during every Sunday or fewer games in basketball or hockey. The question I have is, when World Series time comes, it seems that the average person can never get a ticket. The reserve seat ticket holders throughout the season get their choice, and the players in the other teams get their choice, and just every other rich person gets their choice. The average person, the knothole gang little boy, cannot go to see a World Series game. I'd like to know what baseball could do to change that.
The general thrust of the question is, why doesn't the guy who supports the game every day have a better chance to get into the World Series? It's a very good question. It's a very hard question to answer, I can tell you. I've wrestled with this question many times. We do have very basic obligations to the people who do support us every day of the season. Those are the guys who go out and buy those seats every day. They are the backbone of the support of the club. At the same time, the other major league clubs, and you're quite correct, they get a significant allotment along with the players. Both have a legitimate interest in being at the World Series. Unfortunately, once you've taken care of these legitimate interests, it is hard to have enough tickets left in most locales to accommodate the public demand. And at the moment, I can't tell you that I have any answer for that. I am most mindful of it, and we are looking at that problem. I will say this. Baseball is the only sport which televises its main events right against the main event itself. You will find no other sport doing this. Baseball does it out of a sense of responsibility to its fans, knowing that a great many of them are disappointed and cannot come to those games because the seats just aren't there. So baseball puts that game on television, and you can see the World Series in this town, if it's here or there or wherever it may be. You can see that game on television, and it's available to you. Baseball, out of a great sense of responsibility to its fans, does that.
What's the story behind the different decision reached on the
Valentine Salerno, like a great many things that I've been faced with since I allegedly stopped practicing law and became commissioner of baseball, is still in the courts. There were two branches to it. They brought proceeding in the National Labor Relations Board, which they have lost. They also have court cases pending, which are still pending. One of them went up Supreme Court and they lost it, but there's another one still pending. In the meantime, they are not in baseball and are pursuing their litigation. We have offered them the opportunity to come back into baseball as minor league umpires and establish that they can cut the mustard today, and neither one of them has been interested in doing that. Dear? I know all about it. I think Paul Richards, the general manager of the Atlanta club, has a point of view at variance with that of most people in professional baseball. He said, or at least he was quoted as saying, that a college baseball training is almost invariably harmful to the development of a baseball player. I think that's baloney. Obviously, great ball players are coming out of the colleges. There's no earthly proof for that statement put so broadly. His position is, and I can understand his position, if you get down to the nuts and bolts of his position, he is saying a young man is coming out of high school. He's a very good baseball player. If you will let me have him, I can develop him faster than most colleges can develop him, and that may be true. Nonetheless, the colleges have to play and are playing a very important part in the area of player development, and they will continue to do so, particularly as college coaching improves, as it's doing all the time. More and more former professionals like Bobby Richardson of the New York Yankees, Gil McDougall of the New York Yankees, Enos Slaughter just became head coach at Duke, former great Cardinal ball player. More and more great coaches are coming into the college ranks, and this is going to mean that Paul's wronger and wronger. Either of you. I knew sooner or later somebody was going to ask me about Jim Bowden's book, Ball 4.
I was going to get to that.
Oh, good, Bob. Yeah, I'll comment on it. I read it, naturally, and I have to tell you that I think the book is highly inaccurate. I don't say there are not things in it that are accurate. There is some truth. But I believe the book is highly inaccurate. Presents a very unfair picture of baseball, and I think was very unfair to his teammates and their wives, who he slandered. And I didn't like the book for that reason.
I have a question, but first I have a solution to the World Series problem. I remember about 12 years ago we had a great series here in 1959, and it was in the Coliseum. And I think that a possible solution is this year that when the series comes to Los Angeles, I think what's Dodger Stadium is a nice place. I'd love to have it back in the Coliseum so we could have that little fence.
I will pass the recommendation on to the California clubs and to myself.
My question is, seriously, there have been a lot of articles, notably Sports Illustrated, a lot of others probably with less credibility, about the use of drugs, notably stimulants and possibly steroids in professional baseball. I wonder what your assessment of the reality or lack of reality in that situation.
Yeah, steroids has not been a significant problem in baseball, but the amphetamines and the barbiturates have been some problem. And this is one of the reasons I instituted a program designed to deal with the drug situation, an educational program designed to deal with the drug program. We were not so much concerned about the level of current usage, which I believe to be very limited. But with the possibility that with the wider availability of the amphetamine and barbiturate groups, that there was a danger with the youngsters coming into our game that there could be more of a problem in this area. We don't think that a stimulant to improve performance has any place in professional or amateur athletics. And we also feel that the use of the amphetamines can be very harmful to the athlete physically. I think demonstrably can be, particularly if the use is not carefully regulated. So it is only permitted in baseball by prescription, where it is permitted. The barbiturates, you all know as much about drugs because young people today get a lot more education as I do. The barbiturates are a dangerous group because of their addictive potential. And where an athlete, under the pressure of trying to succeed, which most of us don't have, gets overly involved in that kind of thing, there's a real danger of addiction. And we feel also that we have a role as a sort of image maker industry to worry about the image that we make. So this is essentially where we stand on that. This will be an ongoing program in baseball designed to be very educational and designed to get our young men like Wes Parker out in the community action programs, trying to help educate young people about what the real dangers of drugs are and what the real dangers aren't.
In relation to you saying that Bouton's book was slanderous to the players and their wives, I would, after speaking with a number of players on the Dodgers and a few other teams, I would think that actually the situation between baseball players and other women on the road have gotten to the point where there's almost a baseball player's morality, and without really, wanting a divorce from their wife or anything, or thinking anything really wrong with it, ball players are just promiscuous on the road. And I would think that Bouton was, whether, he specifically slandered maybe one player or something, or said something wrong, but I would think his portrayal of that type of situation is pretty accurate.
I don't agree with you. I don't think the ball players have a separate morality. I really don't. I don't think they're any different from anybody in this room, really. Good or bad. Good or bad. I wasn't trying to make a moral judgment. I have my own moral standards that I have to try to live by, as you must. I wasn't trying to make a moral judgment. I was trying to make a judgment of what was inaccurate. I felt it was highly inaccurate based on my knowledge of what I felt was my knowledge of the facts.
In light of the situation in Seattle last year and San Diego this year, what do you think of the future plans for expansion?
There's been a lot of talk about expansion in sports, and I take the position that any healthy sport will expand from time to time. Baseball, however, has expanded from 16 clubs to 24 clubs in the last decade. I think that's a lot of expansion. I would think there's not any very immediate prospects for expansion in baseball. Someday, yes, it's going to happen, but I don't see any immediate prospects for expansion. I do see a prospect, and I can't put a period of time on this, I wish I could. I do see prospect for increasing international play in baseball. The Japanese are coming along very fast. We had two of the Japanese professional teams in the spring training camps with us, the Orions from Tokyo and the Giants from Tokyo. They really did quite well, particularly the Giants. And most of us, I think, feel they could compete effectively, if not necessarily as champions today, in American professional baseball. This is not necessarily true of the other teams in the Japanese leagues. These are the cream of the crop. But the Japanese leagues are improving, and I think it's only a matter of time until we have more international play, and I think it's a great prospect.
Could you comment on the effectiveness of the Kansas City plan of luring other college athletes?
Yes, indeed, I can. This is the Kansas City Academy, or so-called Royals Academy, which is operated in Sarasota, Florida. This is the brainchild of one of our very finest baseball executives, Ewing Kauffman, the president of the Royals. And his concept is that there are an awful lot of young athletes, probably particularly in our big cities and probably particularly in our ghettos, who because of a reduced availability of playing space may never be exposed to baseball. And he feels that he has been able to develop tests, physical tests and mental tests, which help him to identify a youngster who may have good apparent athletic ability but no experience in baseball, may be able to help him identify that young man as a potential baseball professional. And when he identifies these young people, he brings them into the Sarasota Academy of the Royals, gives them a college training at the same time. It's a college and a baseball training program all wrapped into one. And out of these graduates, he hopes to bring some fine young players to the Royals. We're all watching it with great interest. It's an exceedingly expensive program because you have to scout nationwide, and the expense of operating the plant itself and the attendant educational facilities. It's part of Manatee Junior College there. Is very great. He sunk a lot of money into it, and we hope it's going to be successful in finding us another Mickey Mantle or a Babe Ruth someplace that we might have overlooked.
We have time for about 2 more questions, and then we have to go.
Let's see, who have I missed back there? The question is, what is the possibility for interleague play as in professional football? I had really hoped I was going to get through this whole meeting without anybody asking me that question, but you caught me. It's hard for me to say, frankly. Baseball is divided into 2 camps on this subject. I think basically the American League has tended to favor it with some dissent. The National League has tended to oppose it with some dissent, in my judgment. I can't say that I see any early prospect of its being adopted because it takes votes, and there's a genuine division of opinion as whether it would be good for baseball. Football does not necessarily work on a tailor-made schedule. Baseball has always tried to provide perfectly even competition. This means that each team is going to play the same number of games against the same teams. In other words, each team in competition will play exactly the same schedule against exactly the same caliber of competition. In football, and it works in football, and I'm not critical of it, you may have a traditional rivalry between, I was a kid and was raised in Washington, between the Washington Redskins and the Chicago Bears. The Bears were a very good team in those days, better than they are today. And this meant that the Redskins were good in those days. This meant that the Redskins had to play a very tough outside opponent. They also always played Green Bay, back when Green Bay was in its earliest great period. And some of the other teams in the Redskins division were not playing those outside opponents. This produces an imbalance. But as I say, it has worked in football and been accepted. I doubt whether that kind of imbalance would be accepted in baseball, but I hasten to say this. Interleague play could be structured so as not to produce an imbalance. If it were done on a full scale schedule, I think it would almost be bound to produce some imbalance.
Quite a while ago, a columnist at the Los Angeles Times brought up an interesting point. He showed that on the average, professional football, there are 14 games played a year in professional football. College basketball, at the most 30. College professional basketball, quite a few, maybe 100, including playoff games. And then he said in baseball, they play 162 plus your divisional playoffs now, plus the World Series. And he suggested that maybe this could be part of the root of why the individual game isn't that important, and that's why your turnout is kind of low. And he suggested maybe that they cut down the schedule and play just on the weekends, making each individual baseball game maybe as important as an individual football game.
Well, let me say first, I don't think our turnout is very low. We drew 29 million last year just in our regular season games, and I rather expect we're going to go over 30 million this year. So far this year, baseball's attendance is up 14% in the first month, which is a rather dramatic gain. So I don't really think attendance is low, but what you are suggesting is that the per game attendance might be increased if you played fewer games. Increase the importance of particular games. I don't doubt if you played one game you could draw wonderfully well. I don't know where the breaking point is in between 162 and 1. Baseball is a developing, suspenseful game. It is not like basketball. It is not like football. Thank goodness for that, because in the total sports spectrum, you want different things. You want wrestling, and you want lacrosse, and you want basketball, you want football, you want baseball. It's different from the others. It doesn't present you the same kind of spectacle. It's an unwinding, suspenseful development, a dramatic one, I think, if the races are going well particularly, over a period of time, and this is part of baseball's charm and always has been. As far as trying to play on weekends, that might be great in some towns and terrible in others. You've got very different patterns of the use of leisure time in different parts of the country. What might be good in San Diego might be disaster in Boston. So you have a real problem with that kind of scheduling. Again, there's a big division in the House of Baseball on the length of the season. The American League has tended to support a shortening, and the National League has tended to support staying where we are, and the players have pressed for a shortened season. However, I will say this, I haven't noted any other professional sports shortening their season.
What is the reason for outlawing long hair and facial hair in baseball?
It is not outlawed.
No, but they can't have mustache or beard.
This is a matter they work out with their managers. There is no regulation or rule in baseball on the subject.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Kuhn, and thank you all very much for coming.